The kid couldn't have been more than 7 years old, standing on Beverly Porter's doorstep, in the pouring rain, clutching a crumpled photograph and shivering like a leaf. Beverly had opened her door, expecting a package delivery, not a soaking wet child with tears streaming down his face, holding up a picture of her from 3 years ago. Before she could even process what was happening, before she could ask his name or where his parents were, 3 black SUVs pulled up to her quiet Scottsdale cul-de-sac with the kind of precision that made her heart skip. The rear door of the center vehicle opened, and out stepped a man in an immaculate white suit and fedora, moving with the kind of authority that made time itself seem to slow down. The child's face lit up instantly. "Uncle Darius!" he shouted. And suddenly Beverly's entire world tilted on its axis because she realized 2 things simultaneously. This wasn't a random kid, and the man walking toward her door was about to change everything she thought she knew about her own past. If you're new here and you love stories about second chances, unexpected connections, and the kind of romance that sneaks up on you when life throws you the wildest curveball imaginable, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss where this goes. I promise you that. The full story continues. Beverly Porter stood frozen in her doorway, her mind racing faster than her heart. The child, drenched, trembling, but now smiling, ran past her toward the approaching figure. Darius Kincaid Monroe, known to most as Big Boss Darius, moved up her walkway with the grace of a man who'd never rushed for anything in his life. At 62, he carried himself with the kind of presence that made people instinctively straighten their posture. The white suit somehow remained pristine despite the Arizona drizzle, and those dark eyes held a warmth that contradicted the intimidating convoy behind him. "Beverly Porter," he said, his voice smooth as aged bourbon. It wasn't a question. He knew exactly who she was. "Who are you?" Beverly managed, though her voice cracked. "And why does this child have my picture?" Darius smiled, the kind that reached his eyes and made you feel like you were the only person in the world. "Ma'am, I apologize for the dramatic entrance. My nephew here, this is Julian, and he's been on quite an adventure today. May we come inside? I promise you, everything will make sense, and I suspect you're going to want to sit down for this conversation." Beverly glanced at Julian, who was now clutching Darius's hand and looking up at her with those big, hopeful eyes. Against every instinct that screamed stranger danger, she stepped aside. Something about the way Darius carried himself, the genuine concern in his expression, made her trust him. Or maybe she just needed to know why a 7-year-old had a photo of her. Inside her modest but tastefully decorated living room, Darius removed his fedora and set it carefully on her coffee table. Julian immediately curled up on her sofa like he belonged there, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Beverly noticed the expensive watch on Darius's wrist, the custom tailoring of his suit, the diamond cufflinks that probably cost more than her car. "Coffee?" she offered, defaulting to hospitality because her brain couldn't process anything else. "That would be wonderful, thank you." Darius's manners were impeccable, old school in the best way. In her kitchen, Beverly's hands shook as she prepared the coffee. Through the doorway, she could hear Darius speaking softly to Julian, something about being safe now, about everything being okay. When she returned with 2 mugs, Darius had covered the boy with a throw blanket she kept on her armchair. "He's asleep already," Darius said quietly, settling into the chair across from her. "Poor kid's been through it today. Ran away from his grandmother's house this morning, took a bus, walked 6 miles, all to find you." "But why?" Beverly's voice barely rose above a whisper. "I don't know him. I've never seen him before in my life." Darius took a slow sip of his coffee, and Beverly could see him choosing his words carefully. "Julian's mother is my niece, Sienna. She passed away 4 months ago. Cancer. She was only 32. He paused, letting that tragedy settle. Before she died, she made Julian promise something. She gave him that photograph and told him if he ever felt lost, if he ever needed help, he should find the woman in the picture. She told him, "You were his guardian angel." Beverly's coffee mug slipped slightly in her grip. "But that's impossible. I don't know anyone named Sienna. I've never—" "3 years ago," Darius interrupted gently, "you were in Chicago for a medical conference. You're a nurse practitioner, correct?" "Yes." "But how do you—" "You were walking back to your hotel late one evening. You saw a young woman collapsed on the sidewalk, clearly in distress. You stopped. You called an ambulance. You stayed with her, held her hand, talked to her to keep her conscious. You even rode with her to the hospital." Darius leaned forward, his eyes intense. "That was Sienna. She was 8 weeks pregnant with Julian at the time. The doctor said if you hadn't stopped, if you hadn't made that call when you did, she would have died right there on that street." The memory came flooding back. Beverly's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God. The young woman with the diabetic shock. I remember. She was so scared. I stayed with her until her family arrived, and then I had to catch my flight the next morning. I never even got her name." "She got yours," Darius said, his voice thick with emotion. "She asked the nurses." "She never forgot you, Beverly. She told Julian about you his whole life, about the angel in the blue jacket who saved his life before he was even born. She kept that photograph. Someone snapped it at the hospital without you knowing, I suppose. When Sienna got sick last year, when she knew she wasn't going to make it, she wanted Julian to know he had people in this world who represented pure goodness. She wanted him to know your name." Tears streamed down Beverly's face. "I was just doing what anyone would do." "No, ma'am," Darius said firmly. "You did what most people don't do. You stopped. You cared. You saved 2 lives that night." He glanced at Julian, sleeping peacefully now. "His grandmother, Sienna's mother, she's been struggling. She's 74, not in great health herself. Julian's been acting out, hurting, missing his mama. Today he decided he needed to find his guardian angel, so he took his life savings, $43, and caught a Greyhound bus to Phoenix." "Good Lord," Beverly breathed. "He could have been." "I know." Darius's jaw tightened. "When his grandmother called me in a panic this afternoon, I had every resource at my disposal trying to locate him. We tracked his bus route, figured out he'd asked directions to this neighborhood. Thank God for security cameras and a few good people who noticed a kid traveling alone." He smiled softly. "He's a smart boy. Resourceful, like his mother." Beverly wiped her eyes, looking at the sleeping child. "What happens now? Does he go back to Chicago? That's actually why I'm here, beyond just returning Julian safely." Darius set down his coffee mug. "His grandmother called me because she knows she can't give him what he needs. She's doing her best, but she's overwhelmed. I've been helping financially, but Julian needs stability. He needs—" Darius paused. "He needs someone with the heart to stop for a stranger on a street corner." Beverly's breath caught. "You can't possibly mean—" "I'm not asking you to adopt him," Darius said quickly. "But I am asking if you'd consider being part of his life. Maybe supervised visits at first. Get to know each other. I have the means to make sure you're compensated for your time, your effort. I can arrange everything legally, properly." "I don't want your money," Beverly said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. She looked at Julian again. "But I can't just abandon him, not after hearing this." Darius's smile was genuine, appreciative. "You're exactly who Sienna said you were." He pulled out his phone. "Let me call his grandmother. Let her know he's safe. Then we can talk about what comes next." While Darius stepped into Beverly's kitchen to make the call, she sat watching Julian sleep. His little face was peaceful now, one small hand tucked under his cheek. She thought about the young woman from Chicago, about that night 3 years ago when she'd almost kept walking, almost told herself someone else would help. What were the odds? What kind of cosmic thread had woven their lives together? Darius returned, and there was something different in his expression. "His grandmother wants to speak with you, if you're willing." Beverly took the phone with shaking hands. The woman on the other end, Loretta, had a voice worn thin by grief and gratitude. They spoke for 20 minutes. Loretta cried, thanked her, over and over, explained how Julian had been having nightmares, how he'd been asking about the angel his mother told him about. By the end of the call, Beverly had agreed to let Julian stay the weekend, with Darius coordinating everything. "I have a suite at the Phoenician," Darius explained after she hung up. "I was supposed to be here for business meetings anyway. I can stay close by, be available if you need anything. Julian knows me well, I'm his great-uncle, and since Sienna passed, I've been trying to step up more in his life." Beverly nodded, still processing everything. "This is all so surreal. Life has a way of being that," Darius said with a knowing smile. "The most meaningful connections often come from the most unexpected places." Something in the way he said it, the way he looked at her, made Beverly's heart skip. She was 48, divorced 3 years ago from a man who'd never appreciated her compassion, who'd called her too soft for always helping others. She'd convinced herself that chapter of her life, romance, connection, someone seeing her, was closed. But the way Darius Monroe looked at her made her feel seen in a way she'd forgotten was possible. "I should let you two get settled," Darius said, standing. "I'll have some of Julian's things brought over: clothes, his favorite books, that stuffed elephant he can't sleep without. May I take you both to breakfast tomorrow morning? Somewhere Julian would enjoy. Nothing too formal." "That sounds nice," Beverly heard herself say. At her door, Darius paused, putting his fedora back on with practiced elegance. "Thank you, Beverly, for stopping 3 years ago, for opening your door today, for being the kind of person who makes the world a little less cold." After he left, Beverly stood in her living room, watching the convoy pull away into the Scottsdale evening. The rain had stopped, leaving everything smelling fresh and new. Julian stirred on her couch, mumbled something about pancakes, and fell back into deep sleep. Beverly sat down beside him, gently brushing hair off his forehead, and wondered how her ordinary Tuesday had turned into something that felt like the beginning of an entirely new life. The next morning brought Arizona sunshine and a knock at her door at exactly 9 o'clock. Darius stood there in cream-colored linen, still impeccably dressed but more casual, the fedora white as always. Behind him, Julian bounced on his toes, cleaned up and wearing fresh clothes, excitement radiating off him. "Miss Beverly," Julian practically shouted, "Uncle Darius says we're going to a place that has chocolate chip pancakes and bacon." "Does he now?" Beverly laughed, grabbing her purse. She'd barely slept, too busy Googling Darius Kincaid Monroe and discovering he was more than just wealthy. He was philanthropic royalty. Hospitals, schools, youth programs across the country, all bearing his foundation's name. Articles about his business empire, his cars, his lifestyle, but also his reputation for being a gentleman, for using his influence to help people. The restaurant Darius chose was perfect, upscale enough to have excellent food, casual enough that Julian could be a kid. Over breakfast, Beverly watched how Darius interacted with his great-nephew, patient, attentive, laughing at Julian's jokes, gently correcting his table manners without making him feel bad. This wasn't a man playing at being a caretaker. He genuinely loved this child. "So what do you do, Mr. Monroe?" Beverly asked, knowing full well but wanting to hear it from him. "Please, call me Darius." He smiled. "I made my money in real estate and tech investments. Got lucky early, made smart moves, and now I mostly focus on giving it away in ways that matter." He paused, cutting Julian's pancakes smaller. "Sienna's mother, Loretta, she's my younger sister. Only sibling I have left. When Sienna got sick, I tried everything. Best doctors, experimental treatments, flew them anywhere in the world that had a chance of helping. But cancer doesn't care about money." The pain in his voice was real. Beverly reached across the table instinctively, touching his hand. "I'm so sorry." Darius turned his hand over, briefly squeezing hers before letting go. "Life happens. What matters is what we do with it, how we show up for people." His eyes held hers. Something I think you understand better than most. Julian, oblivious to the moment passing between the adults, launched into a story about his school science project. Beverly found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in months, and when she caught Darius watching her with that warm, appreciative expression, she felt something flutter in her chest she thought had died with her divorce. The weekend unfolded with surprising ease. Julian was a sweet kid dealing with enormous grief, but he opened up to Beverly in ways that surprised her. They baked cookies Saturday afternoon, and Julian told her about his mother, how she'd sing off-key in the car, how she'd let him stay up late reading, how she'd promised him they'd visit the Grand Canyon someday. "Uncle Darius says maybe we can all go," Julian said, carefully placing cookie dough on the sheet. "Would you come with us, Miss Beverly?" She caught Darius's eye across the kitchen. He'd stopped by to check in, though Beverly suspected it was more than that. "I think that sounds wonderful," she said. Saturday evening, after Julian was asleep in Beverly's guest room, Darius stayed for wine on her back patio. The desert air was cool, stars impossibly bright away from the city lights. "He adores you already," Darius observed, swirling his glass. "I can see why Sienna chose you. You have this presence, this calm." "I'm a nurse," Beverly said with a slight laugh. "Calm is part of the job description. It's more than that." Darius turned to face her. "It's who you are. I've met a lot of people in my life, Beverly. People who help because they want something in return. People who perform kindness like it's theater. You're not like that. You helped Sienna because it was the right thing to do. You're helping Julian for the same reason." "And you?" Beverly asked, emboldened by the wine and the intimacy of the moment. "Why are you here, Darius? You could have sent someone to pick up Julian. You could have hired professionals to handle all this." "Because," he said quietly, "I learned a long time ago that the most important things in life require your personal attention. And because—" he paused, choosing his words, "because the moment I heard about the nurse who saved my niece, who she'd talked about for years, I wanted to meet you. I wanted to thank you. And now that I have, I find myself wanting to know you." Beverly's breath caught. I'm just a nurse practitioner from Scottsdale." "You're a man who's tired of shallow connections," Darius finished. "A man who appreciates substance, character, real kindness." He set down his glass. "If I'm reading this wrong, if I'm overstepping, please tell me. But I'd like to see you again, Beverly. Beyond Julian, beyond the circumstances that brought us together, I'd like to take you to dinner. I'd like to get to know the woman who stops for strangers in the rain." "I'm 48 years old," Beverly said, though she wasn't sure why that was her first response. Darius laughed, a rich, warm sound. "And I'm 62. Age is just a number, darling. What matters is whether two people see each other, really see each other. And I see you, Beverly Porter." She agreed to dinner the following weekend, her heart racing with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. Sunday evening came too quickly. Loretta had arranged for Julian to fly back to Chicago with Darius, who had business there anyway. At the airport private terminal, because of course Darius had a private jet, Julian hugged Beverly so tightly she thought her ribs might crack. "Will you come visit me?" he asked, pulling back with those big, hopeful eyes. "As soon as I can arrange time off work," Beverly promised, meaning it. Loretta was waiting in Chicago, and Beverly spent an hour on video chat with her, the two women connecting over their shared love for Julian, their shared grief for Sienna, their shared determination to give this child the best life possible. Over the next few weeks, Beverly's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. She flew to Chicago twice, staying in a hotel Darius arranged, spending days with Julian. She met his teachers, his therapist, his friends. She and Loretta developed a genuine friendship, bonded by their commitment to Julian's well-being. And then there was Darius. Their dinner turned into a weekend in Napa Valley. Darius showed up at her door with a driver and an invitation to escape reality for 48 hours. The vineyard he owned, casually owned, like it was nothing, was breathtaking. They talked for hours, walked through grapevines at sunset, shared stories about their lives, their losses, their hopes. "I was married once," Darius told her over dinner at a private table overlooking the valley. 30 years ago. She died in a car accident when I was 34. I threw myself into building my empire, telling myself I didn't have time for love. But really, I was just scared. And now?" Beverly asked softly. "Now I'm 62 years old, and I've realized that all the money in the world means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with. Someone real. Someone who sees you, not your bank account." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I think you might be that someone, Beverly." She wanted to be cautious, to protect her heart. But something about Darius made her brave. Maybe it was his honesty, his vulnerability despite his power. Maybe it was the way he treated everyone with respect, from the vineyard staff to the valet to her. He was genuine in a way she'd never experienced in a man of his status. 3 months after Julian showed up at her door, Beverly made a decision that surprised even her. She accepted a nurse practitioner position in Chicago, one with better pay and benefits that Darius had absolutely not pulled strings to arrange, though she suspected otherwise. She wanted to be closer to Julian, to be part of his life in a real, consistent way. "This isn't just about the boy, is it?" her best friend Rachel asked over margaritas before Beverly's move. "No," Beverly admitted, "it's not. Girl, you're in love with a billionaire. This is literally a fairy tale." Beverly laughed. "It's not like that. Darius is just, he's good, he's real. The money is just noise." But Rachel wasn't entirely wrong. Because when Beverly arrived in Chicago and Darius picked her up from the airport himself, no driver, just him in a classic car that probably cost more than a house, looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered, she realized she'd fallen completely, utterly in love with Darius Kincaid Monroe. They took things slowly, mindful of Julian, mindful of building something lasting. Darius courted her properly, flowers, handwritten notes, thoughtful gestures that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with paying attention. He remembered she loved old movies, so he rented out a private theater for Casablanca. He noticed she missed Arizona sunsets, so he arranged a weekend trip to Sedona. 6 months after their first meeting, Darius took Beverly and Julian to the Grand Canyon. They stood at the edge, Julian between them, each holding one of his hands. "Mom would have loved this," Julian said quietly. "She's here," Beverly said, squeezing his hand. "She's always with you." That evening, after Julian was asleep in their suite, Darius and Beverly stood on their private balcony, the canyon sprawling before them in moonlight. "I have a question for you," Darius said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Beverly's heart stopped. "Not that question," Darius said quickly, laughing at her expression. "Not yet, anyway. Though I hope you know that's where my heart is headed." He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a small diamond pendant. "This belonged to my mother. She told me to give it to someone worthy, someone who represented the best of what humanity could be." He fastened it around Beverly's neck. "You stopped for a stranger. You opened your door to a lost child. You changed all of our lives by simply choosing kindness. That's who you are, Beverly Porter, and I love you for it." "I love you too," Beverly whispered, and when he kissed her, she felt like every difficult moment in her life had been leading to this, to him, to Julian, to this unexpected family they were building together. Julian's grandmother, Loretta, cried happy tears when they told her about their relationship. "Sienna would have loved this," she said. "She always believed in angels." The legal process of Beverly becoming Julian's guardian with Loretta's enthusiastic support took another 6 months. There were court dates, home visits, evaluations. Darius used his connections to smooth the process, but never to circumvent it. Everything was done properly, legally, with Julian's best interests at the center. On the day the judge granted Beverly legal guardianship, With Loretta maintaining her grandmother rights and full involvement, Julian threw his arms around Beverly's waist. "Does this mean you're my mom now?" Beverly knelt down, looking him in the eyes. "I could never replace your mom, sweetheart. She was special, and she'll always be your mom. But I promise to love you, protect you, and be here for you always. If you want to call me Mom, you can. If you want to call me Beverly, that's okay too." "Can I think about it?" Julian asked seriously. "Take all the time you need," Beverly said, hugging him close. 2 weeks later, Julian came home from school and casually said, "Hey, Mom, can I have a snack?" Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Beverly's eyes filled with tears, and she had to turn away to the refrigerator to compose herself. Darius proposed on a Tuesday evening, nothing elaborate or showy. They were in Beverly's kitchen. She'd insisted on keeping her modest home, even as Darius offered her the world, making dinner together while Julian did homework at the table. Darius simply set down the spatula, got down on one knee, and said, "Beverly Porter, you make every day an adventure in the best possible way. Will you marry me?" Julian's homework went flying as he jumped up, shouting, "Yes, say yes!" "I think I should probably answer." Beverly laughed through tears. "Oh, right," Julian said, trying to look serious. "What's your answer?" "Yes," Beverly said, looking at Darius. "Always yes." They married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the vineyard in Napa, just close friends and family. Loretta was there, beaming with pride. Julian served as ring-bearer and took his job very seriously. As Beverly walked down the aisle, no father to give her away, just her own decision to choose this love, she thought about the night 3 years ago in Chicago, how she'd almost kept walking, how one decision to stop, to care, to help, had led to this moment. Darius looked at her like she'd hung the moon. In his white suit and fedora, he was distinguished and elegant, but it was the emotion in his eyes that took her breath away. Pure love, pure gratitude, pure recognition of something sacred. "You saved my family twice," he whispered when they were pronounced husband and wife. "Once 3 years ago, and again the day you opened your door." "You saved me too," Beverly whispered back. "You showed me what love could be." They honeymooned in Italy, but not without Julian. He was part of their life now, part of their joy. The three of them explored Rome, Venice, the Amalfi Coast. Darius taught Julian about art and history. Beverly made sure they didn't eat gelato for every meal, and together they built memories that would last forever. Back in Chicago, life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Beverly continued her work as a nurse practitioner, refusing to let Darius's wealth change who she was. She still stopped for people who needed help. She still volunteered at free clinics. She still believed in showing up, in being present, in choosing kindness. Darius supported her completely, never trying to change her, only trying to amplify her impact. Together, they established the Sienna Foundation, dedicated to helping families dealing with cancer, to supporting children who'd lost parents, to funding programs that connected at-risk youth with mentors. Julian thrived. His grades improved, his nightmares faded, and while he still missed his mother would always miss his mother, he'd found peace. He had Beverly, who packed his lunches and came to every school event. He had Darius, who taught him about business and integrity and how to be a good man. He had Loretta, who visited monthly and spoiled him appropriately. He had a family. One evening, 2 years after that rainy day in Scottsdale, Beverly sat on the balcony of the Chicago penthouse she now called home, though she'd insisted they keep her old house in Arizona too, needing something that was just hers. Julian was at a sleepover, and Darius sat beside her, their hands intertwined, watching the city lights. "Do you ever think about that day?" Darius asked. "If Julian hadn't run away, if he hadn't found you all the time," Beverly admitted, "everything would be different. But would you change it?" Darius turned to look at her. "The chaos, the uncertainty, the complete upending of your life?" Beverly thought about the life she'd had before, safe, predictable, lonely in ways she hadn't admitted even to herself. Then she thought about Julian's laugh, about Darius's hand in hers, about the family they'd built from tragedy and chance and choice. "Not for anything," she said firmly. "Not for anything in the world." Darius kissed her forehead, pulling her close. Below them, Chicago hummed with life, millions of people living their stories, making their choices, stopping or walking past moments that could change everything. And Beverly Porter Monroe, formerly just a nurse practitioner from Scottsdale, now a wife, mother, philanthropist, and guardian angel to more people than she'd ever know, understood that kindness wasn't just about grand gestures or life-saving moments. It was about opening doors. It was about stopping when others walked past. It was about believing that love and connection and family could come from the most unexpected places. All because she'd chosen to help a stranger 3 years ago. All because a little boy had been brave enough to search for his angel. All because a man in a white suit had shown up at her door and seen her for exactly who she was. That's the beautiful thing about life, Beverly thought, snuggled against her husband under the Chicago stars. You never know which moment, which choice, which act of kindness will change everything. You just have to stay open to possibility, stay true to who you are, and trust that the right connections will find you when you need them most. And sometimes, just sometimes, those connections arrive with a knock on your door and a child's hopeful eyes looking up at you, holding a photograph of a moment you'd almost forgotten, a moment that turned out to be the most important one of your entire life.